Good afternoon and welcome to another in our series of videos interviewing charter signatories. My name's Liz Moscrop, I'm CEO of Gear Up Media and sit on the comms committee for the charter. And I'm delighted today to be with Debbie Hartshorn, who's People Director at Bristol Airport, who were one of the first signatories of the Charter, and I believe possibly the first airport to sign up to the Charter. And we're talking in September 2020. Debbie, what's going on for Bristol Airport now?
Good afternoon, Liz, and thank you for your time today. It's hard to comprehend the difference that 6 months or more can make. I think at the start of this year, as a thriving and rapidly growing airport, our biggest challenge that we were facing at the time was capacity for our airlines and our passengers. And we were preparing our planning application to grow to 12 million passengers per annum. As you know, Liz, the aviation industry is on its knees at the moment. Passenger levels have dropped up to 95%, at some airports, almost overnight. And latest AOA figures show as many as 110,000 jobs being at risk in the industry, which is a sobering thought for all of us. And I think without targeted sector-specific support, the UK faces the loss of connectivity and trade that's vital as we approach our exit from the EU. Our trade bodies have been very vocal to this effect. We're a significant employer in the Southwest. 4,000 people employed on site in total, and many, many more indirectly in travel and tourism, manufacturing and the supplier chain. So we feel we have a big responsibility to our region. We've already had to restructure and downsize, as have all our business partners, and the winter's looking to be even more challenging than we originally feared. So our focus is very much one of survival, lobbying government for the promised aviation recovery package, and ensuring we are ready for recovery so we can once again bring jobs to the region.
It's challenging and painful times too, and in your role as People Director, there's a lot of having to show up with real emotional intelligence and grace, I think, at a time like this. And given what we're going through at the moment and what you're going through in your role in the company, why are you remaining committed and motivated to be part of the Charter when you've got so much else on your hands?
Well, we've always called out that, we truly recognise that a diverse and inclusive organisation is a more effective organisation, not just gender, but, age, sex, ethnicity. We need to represent the wider population, we need to represent our passenger and customer base, and we need a blend of people to bring a variety of ideas, viewpoints and skills to the table, and that's going to be more important than ever.
And that does bring me into my next question is how are you, I totally agree, and it's wonderful to be part of the group of people championing the Charter. It's a real privilege. How is this diversity of thought and of employees panning out in your own organisation?
Well, our sector has a long history of male domination, particularly in operational roles, and I think that will take creativity and time to redress. That's the reason we were one of the first signatories of the Charter. We want to support and also receive support because none of us can come up with all of the ideas on our own. I think one silver lining from the current crisis is we've been able to introduce fully flexible working for our non-operational colleagues. And I think that will remove some barriers for some of our colleagues with, childcare responsibilities, for example. I think it's a well-known fact, that career breaks can have a negative impact. And, part-time hours can sometimes have a negative impact. And those have all been clear objective of ours that we've been able to perhaps progress a little bit more quickly during this time.
That's very heartening to hear. And although I myself haven't had those particular issues in terms of career development, I have had different issues as a woman in the industry. And I'm wondering, have you also experienced that? And if so, would you give us a personal insight as to something you've had during your career that you'd like not to be present for women today and future entrants to the industry?
Sure. Well, I've only been in aviation for a short period of time. I started my career in financial services, and I'm old enough to remember when female managers were rare and weren't actually allowed to even wear trousers. So, financial services has moved on an awful lot from there, and perhaps has been one of the standard bearers, I think, for inclusivity and, removing some of the barriers. So I do feel aviation is still behind the curve. I remember being shocked to discover that not all workspaces had adequate changing and washroom facilities, on the assumption that they wouldn't need them for female colleagues in those domains, shall we say. But my opinion is you can't wait to employ a female mechanic or firefighter before building the facilities. We need to be serious and create an inclusive environment that they want to be part of. And so that was one of the first things that I tackled, because I didn't want anyone else to have to say how many miles I have to walk to go to a female washroom.
No, and it sounds, we're making light of it, but it is very important, because when you're in an environment that supports you don't have to think about where do I go to the nearest washroom. That is one of the stamps of saying we mean it. And and I do hat tip to the financial services industry. I believe that's really, Mary McLeod was in that meeting, the very first meeting, and
yes,
we got this charter for women in finance, which is when Catherine and Catherine Bennett and the rest of the women present said, "Oh, we want one of those," and it was so exciting. So that's really, it's a beam of light in this time for me. And just for you, what's given you most personal pleasure out of the successes we've had so far in constructing the charter and working on the construction of the charter?
Well, I think history has proven that you need a little noise to create change. We're seeing it a lot and increasingly over recent years in various movements. I think the fact that this has elevated the conversation in the boardrooms, and that so many companies have signed up, can only help to drive change. It's also had the added benefit of connecting so many women in aviation that may not have done so otherwise. And I think having people like Catherine and Simati as role models for people who perhaps at times were perhaps feeling they might want to give in, I think, can only be good for resilience and, for driving that change.
I agree. And there's Catherine Smart, of course, Jackie, who's also, taken on now the co-chair. It's great. And you and I having this conversation, we wouldn't have met other than from the charter. No. So a shout out to anyone who's wondering about it. Doesn't matter where you are in your career, come and find out more about this. What would you, if you have one piece of advice to recommend to any company who might feel hesitant about signing up, like, oh, well, we're not big enough, the benchmarks might be too difficult, or we're too big, how can we possibly implement those? What would you say to them?
So I think you could look at it the other way and say, what message does it send to your female employees or prospective candidates if you don't? There are no negatives. It's a way of demonstrating your commitment to equality. And as long as you genuinely want to make steps forward, it doesn't matter how small they are, each organisation can set its own improvement goals, then, sign up. We can do this together.
There is nothing I can add to that Debbie, thank you so much for taking time out to support the Charter in the middle of such a busy time. I wish you all the best of luck at Bristol and look forward to our interactions in future.
You're welcome. Thank you, Liz.